Hello everybody, this is Llodg, and this is Star Wars Battlefront. Star Wars Battlefront is both a third-person and first-person shooter that originally released on September 21st, 2004, on the original Xbox, PlayStation 2, and PC, among other platforms down the line. I'm playing the Xbox version on the Xbox Series X with the original disc, and I just think it's so cool that I can use the original Xbox discs on this console without any issues and a better resolution. If you want to play this game today, you can buy the version on Steam or buy the Xbox version through the Xbox Store. Battlefront was developed by Pandemic Studios, and was released during a time when there were so many Star Wars games coming out one after the other. Maybe there were some movies or something that made that happen. I originally got both this game and the second game off of eBay like 10 years ago, when I was super into older Star Wars games, and I'll be honest, I played the single player mode of this game and then immediately went on to Battlefront 2 to play that game a ton, so I don't have a ton of memories of this first game, so I thought I would come back to see how much it held up after releasing 19 years ago. I'll be covering the single player modes of this game since I have no friends to play split screen with, and I'm pretty sure all the servers were shut down years ago, though the basic game is roughly the same without multiplayer. There are 3 modes you can play. They are Historical Campaign, Galactic Conquest, and Instant Action. I'll start with the Historical Campaign since that's what I originally played when I first got the game. Before you can play, you're able to choose which of the 2 eras you want to play through. Since this game released in 2004, the sequels weren't a thing yet, and even Revenge of the Sith hasn't even released. So we don't get anything officially from those eras and time periods. No matter which of the 2 eras you choose, you will always start out playing the villains for the first half of the missions. So if you choose the Clone Wars era, you get to play as the droids, then after a few missions, you'll play as the clones, and the Imperials and Rebels for the Galactic Civil War. Each mission takes place on a planet that corresponds to an event that happened in the movies, such as the droid army fighting the Gungans in Episode 1, the Battle of Geonosis in Episode 2, even the Battle of Hoth from 5. Of course, there isn't anything explicitly from Episode 3, but they do have some maps from Kashyyyk, which are very similar to what we would find in that movie. There really isn't a linear story that goes along with these missions. At the start of the campaign, there will be a brief text scroll that talks about different planets and battles going on, and they'll start out each mission with a brief explanation of why you are fighting, and that's really it. So if you were hoping you could play this game instead of watching the movies, you'll be out of luck. Though they do use footage from the movies, though you can really tell it's from 2004 because it's pretty grainy compared to the actual gameplay. I do like that they use footage from the movies, if only because they use some of the best parts of the movies and they can really throw you into the specific scene the mission is trying to accomplish. Though sometimes they'll mix around the footage to try and go with the planet the mission is taking place on, like they used the Sarlacc pit scene from Return of the Jedi at the start of the Galactic Civil War campaign, despite it A, being way too early for that to happen, and B, the only thing connecting these two are that the Sarlacc pit is on the map and in the footage. Oh, and they also use Puppet Yoda instead of the much better CGI Yoda. No special edition erasure here. The gameplay of Battlefront is similar to that of Battlefield, where you have a variety of different classes to choose from, and each of them are a bit different from one another. Every faction has the basic classes like Infantry, Sniper, Engineer, and some sort of Demolitions Expert, but every faction also has some unique classes, like how the CIS has Droidekas, or how the Rebels have Wookiees. I am really glad they added these unique classes in because I wouldn't expect a third-person shooter to allow you to play as a droideka, but here we are. Each class has its own main weapon that is unique to them, but they also have a secondary weapon that is just a blaster pistol that can't run out of ammo. It is all energy based. I think it's really nice that they give you this secondary weapon because sometimes the rocket launcher just takes way too long to reload and I need to clear out enemies fast. Enemies will either drop a blue canister or a red one, those being health and ammo drops respectively. It can be nice when you defeat an enemy and get full health from them. If you need more health or ammo and have no enemies to fight, you can also come across these medical and gonk droids that will slowly refill your health or ammo if you stand near them for enough time. I didn't find myself being near them too much since I usually died in battle before I could make my way to them, but they're there if you need them. You can also use the various vehicles that are seen in Star Wars like AT-STs, TIE Fighters, X-Wings, and Tauntauns. I think they all control well enough. Flying ships are kind of weird since you're in an atmosphere and there are so many things that you can just run into. I think it would be better if there were more ships in the air for you to shoot, because I'd be shooting guys on the ground with a ship, which was fun when I could do it well, but I think overall the vehicles were a fun addition since it would be weird if they weren't in the game. Your main goal, no matter which game mode you are playing, is to go around and capture points. which in this game also act like spawn points. If you're able to capture them all, you can win the game if you hold all these points for a certain amount of time. The main way I won missions is to kill all their reinforcements, which you can see at the top of the screen. It can take a while to do this, so I recommend trying to capture points and to defeat as many enemies in your way. Also, once you get down to like 5 enemies, the map can feel super empty for some reason, even though a minute ago you could see so many different enemies. I don't know, maybe the difference between 15 and 5 is just much bigger than I would have thought. There was only one time where I lost, and that was on Geonosis, and all my reinforcements died off. Which is really annoying since these games can take a while to finish. Thankfully, there are a variety of planets to play on, though some get reused with different maps. You can play on classic Star Wars worlds like Naboo, Yavin 4, Renvar? I've never heard of this planet. Okay, after a bit of googling, I found out that Renvar was a planet that was mentioned quite a few times in Legends canon, even getting Codex entry in KOTOR. It even got a mention recently in canon, but why is this planet in Battlefront? Like, I thought it was the planet that was in Revenge of the Sith with Kai Mundi, with them somehow knowing that planet would be a thing, but no. I don't know, this was such a weird choice, but I guess they didn't have any snow planets? Oh wait. The maps are fairly big and felt like there were little battles going on no matter where on the map you were. There was never much time between moments of action, which is good. Despite the historical campaign following the events of the movie, it can also take some liberties in what battles actually happened, like the Separatists' attack on the Wookiees before the clones were put in service, or the battle on Yavin 4 during the destruction of the Death Star, which just didn't happen as far as I know. But I do like that they aren't trying to stick 100% to canon battles because it can create some interesting scenarios and gives a reason for certain maps to be used. After you complete all the missions, you get another movie clip that ties it all together, like the celebration on Naboo from Phantom Menace. As you are completing missions, you can unlock concept art and cool stills. It is neat that we get stuff like this in the game, especially from the early 2000s. And I do like the historical campaign, even if it is a bit bare bones compared to other single player campaigns. But I do love how easily you're able to replicate the events of the movies, like taking AT-ATs down on Hoth. On to the next mode, Galactic Conquest, a staple in the first Battlefront games. However, when I originally played this years ago, I didn't really play this much, especially compared to the Galactic Conquest that was present in Battlefront II. Luckily, there's a short video that explains this mode. Okay, fine, I'll explain it myself. So you're able to choose which army you want to command, along with the maps you'll be fighting on. There are even some that you can unlock later for even more replayability. Basically, you go along and fight battles along all the planets to try and win and conquer them all. As you do, you're able to get planetary bonuses that can give you an edge in the next battles. Every faction also has a special ability that can be used after 4 victories. For example, the Empire can use the Death Star to obliterate rebel planets. Overall, I think it's a cool little mode that can give you a lot of battles with more purpose than just instant action. I do prefer the Galactic Conquest scene in Battlefront 2, but I'll talk about that in another video. On to instant action, which is just a way for you to set up different maps and factions just to play. It would be kind of weird for a shooter game not to have any way to make a custom game, so I'm glad it's here. You can also load in different maps in a row if you just want to play through a set of them, which is cool. And that is all the single player modes. Not super in-depth, but for a game that released almost 20 years ago, it's nice that we get a variety of modes that showcases the gameplay well enough. My favorite classes ended up being the basic infantry unit, the Droideka, and the Dark Trooper. I thought they were all so fun, and they didn't seem to have any of the downsides of other classes like the Arc or Jet Trooper. Even though you can only play as these nameless soldiers, there are Jedi that are able to fight on your side. For the historical campaign, there are certain missions where they appear when it would make sense. And in Galactic Conquest, you are able to spawn them in using one of the planetary bonuses. They just walk around and destroy their enemies in their path. But for most of my time playing it, I didn't realize they were really there until I'd randomly see Luke attack snowtroopers. Also, why is Dooku here on Kashyyyk? Does he just hate Wookiees? The graphics and overall look of this game are honestly really good. Now, of course, comparing it to Star Wars games developed today, they don't really stand a chance, but for being almost 2 decades old, they are really good. I mean, I'm able to tell what things are. Even the faces are okay. It really helps that most of these characters are either in helmets or are robots. I just think these guys might be timeless since they use the Star Wars design so well. Now to talk about the music. And I had to turn it all the way down because it's Star Wars music, and I didn't want it in this video for obvious reasons. Though the movie clips will still have some music in them since they couldn't separate the music from the sound effects. The game can feel a little barren without the music on. But when it is on, it works well since it's Star Wars music, and Star Wars music is generally good. I also really like the sound effects on the menus and stuff being Star Wars things. It's just really cool that they didn't use some random sound effects for the menus. Overall, this game's sound effects really sound like Star Wars, like blaster shots, even speeders sound exactly like how you hear in the movies. And now for 10 little things that appear throughout the game. I love that all the different factions have their own weapons that are specific to them, like the Empire uses E11s and the clones use the DC-15A blaster rifle. They really could have given all the factions the same weapon model to save time, but I'm really glad they had them all use their own unique models to make this game feel like more what we see in the movies. All the clone classes having different colors was such a nice addition, especially for someone who loves all the different clone armors. This game also allows you to go prone. I'm pretty sure this is the only Battlefront game that allows you to do it. But what really makes it weird is that it also allows droids to do it. Like, how are the droids from Phantom Menace able to do that? I thought they were all given the same orders from the control ship, and they had to walk in a line. For missions that clones weren't present in, they had you fight against Gungans or feed palace guards, once again having the game be more like the movies, even though it takes more work. Also, I'm pretty sure these are the only maps these two factions appear in. You can let me know if I'm wrong. There are also a couple maps where there's a third faction, though they don't appear out on the top number counter, but the Tusken Raiders at least have their own control points that they are able to capture and use. I'm just glad Pandemic Studios put so much effort into make this game feel more like Star Wars by adding in all these little things. I like that they let you choose between third and first person, even though I vastly prefer third person for this kind of game with all the advantages it brings along. I think adding in first person perspectives allows people more flexibility for how they want to play the game. I also like the concept art and stills that you unlock. You can also see a trailer for an upcoming Star Wars game. Also, something that I find weird is that this game uses the correct pronunciation of Kashyyyk.
Defend Kashyyyk.
A lot of games in this era, like KOTOR and even Republic Commando, which comes out after this game, use the pronunciation Kashyyyk, and I was under the impression that most of the games would use Kashyyyk, since Three Ys could go either way, and I would just think they would kind of uniform do that until George Lucas put out Revenge of the Sith. But I guess this game uses Kashyyyk. I don't know how many other games use Kashyyyk. The only two games I've actually heard it be Kashyyyk are KOTOR 1 and Republic Commando, so you can let me know if there's any other ones, because I'm honestly interested to know that. Some stuff I didn't like was when you zoom in while in third person, the reticle goes all the way to the top of the screen, which is kind of weird, but nothing game breaking. Also, the auto aim can be really strong, like it'll pull you to look towards an enemy running. Like again, nothing game breaking. You can even turn it off, but it's still weird that it's that strong. I think even 19 years later, this game is really good and a great starting off point for a series that can have a ton of games to its name. If you haven't played it before, I highly recommend it. You can get the original Xbox version off the Xbox store and have it run really well. There's also the Steam version, but if you use a controller, I think it's a little weird to set up. The first Battlefront game is a game that I played a bit, but then immediately went to its sequel, and I'm glad I took the time to come back and see the foundations of the second game. There is a lot to love here, and if I got the game back in 2004, I could see myself playing this for hours on end. The giant battles are just so cool to see, and it is easy to know why this game is such a staple, even within all the other great Star Wars games that came out around it. Hello everybody, this is Llodg, and this is Star Wars Battlefront II. Star Wars Battlefront 2 originally released on the Xbox, PS2, and PC all the way back on October 28, 2005. Just like my previous video on the first Battlefront, I am playing this game on the Xbox Series X through backwards compatibility with the original disc. So this is the Xbox version, looking a bit better than the original. Also, it has all the DLC that came along with Battlefront 2 on Xbox. I also own Battlefront 2 on PC, and it's mostly the same. The only difference is that the main menu on the Xbox is much cooler than on PC. Anyway, this game was also developed by Pandemic Studios, so it's very similar to the previous game with the same gameplay loop, but the game also has some differences. Like the last video, I will really only be talking about the single player mode since I have no friends, but I believe that there are still servers on PC, so if you really want to play multiplayer, it's there for you. Now let's go down the list and start with the first mode, Training, which actually has you playing the Battle of Geonosis from Attack of the Clones as your tutorial, which is really cool. Also, this mission uses the original clone models from the first game, since in this battle they used Phase 1 armor, but other than on this one map, the clones will all be in their fancy new Phase 2 armors. which is really weird that we had to wait for Revenge of the Sith for these armors to become real, because I forgot that Revenge of the Sith introduced this new phase of armor during my first video. But yeah, I really like this tutorial. It gives you all the basics, even as you switch his classes and become a Jedi. Wait, you become a Jedi? Yeah, Battlefront 2 added the amazing feature of letting you actually become a hero throughout the game. I'm not sure on the exact specifics on regular multiplayer games when you can become a hero. I think you have to do really well, but in the campaign they'll let you play as them when certain objectives come up, and in the tutorial you get to play as Mace Windu. Now most of the heroes in this game are Jedi or Sith, but there are a few that don't use the Force or a lightsaber at all. The hero you get is dependent on the faction you're on, but also the map you are on. So on Geonosis you can play as Mace Windu, but on Kashyyyk you can play as Yoda. Each hero has different abilities, as you can see in the bottom left hand corner of your screen, and many will share abilities, but my favorite ability has to be able to throw your lightsaber at the enemy. This mode also introduced us to the cutscenes that this game has, because unlike the previous game, this game actually has non-movie cutscenes. They are from the perspective of the clones of the 501st Legion, which is also Anakin's Legion for those who know the lore. These cutscenes are really cool as they are voiced by Temuera Morrison, the actor for Jango Fett and Boba Fett, and the live-action clones. This was during a time when you could maybe get one of the actors to be in the game based off of that movie, so it's really cool that Temuera Morrison is actually in this game. And that's the tutorial. I think it's a great way to introduce new players to the game. Also, the backdrop of it being the first battle clones are present in is just so cool. Next is the space overview. That's right, in Battlefront 2 there are actually space battles that take place between capital ships, but this mode's just a video, which is weird that they wouldn't give a little setup battle to ease you into it like the tutorial, but whatever. The next mode is the campaign for the game, Rise of the Empire. Like the last game, the campaign follows the story of the movies, though this time you don't switch between the different factions, you stay as the 501st throughout the whole campaign. It also starts out with a title crawl with the fall of the Old Republic. Okay, not that Old Republic, though I wish. The title crawl brings us up to speed into the Clone Wars, and throws us into our first battle with Caio Mundi. Now I won't be going over everything we do in this campaign, because a lot of it is just seeing a scene from Revenge of the Sith and making a whole mission out of it, but I will be talking about the highlights. The next mission takes place in the opening of Revenge of the Sith with the battle over Coruscant. Of course, this is a perfect time to show off the space combat of the game, so you start in your faction's capital ship and are able to fly the variety of ships that spawn there. You're able to fly out and either battle enemy ships in combat, destroy parts of the enemy's capital ships, or even fly into the enemy ship and destroy it from the inside. Sadly, there are only 2 classes to choose from space combat, but there wasn't really a need for all the classes to be here. Overall, I think space combat is a great addition to the game. I love being able to fly around and looking down to see the planet below, it's just so cool. Though it did take me a while to get the hang of the controls. While playing through the campaign, the levels will have their own missions. For example, on Felucia, you have objectives like killing the hostile wildlife, which can add a bit of variety to the missions from the first Battlefront, where every mission was just your standard game. In fact, in Battlefront 2, there are no instances in the campaign of the levels being your standard conquest game type. I know I just kind of praise this campaign for not having it, but I do wish some of the missions were just conquest. Also, the campaign really shows off the amount of different heroes that are playable. Like, I get that Revenge of the Sith came out and showed off all these Jedi on different planets, but I would not have thought we'd actually get to play as Aayla Secura in this type of game. I would have thought it would just be limited to Anakin and Obi-Wan, but we actually get a really good variety. There will also be some missions where you have to do a space battle before you can do the ground battles, like on Kashyyyk. These space battles can be kind of difficult. Like when I was playing this on PC, I got stuck on the mission for hours because I couldn't destroy the comm ships before my reinforcements went down. Oh, also, unlike the first game, if your reinforcements are down to 1, they will just leave you, so the game doesn't just end if your AI teammates die, which is a nice change. Completing each mission can also give you an increase in your current reinforcements, which is really nice if you're just pulling the missions off by the skin of your teeth. You eventually get to Utapau. Wait, I thought it was only Obi-Wan's Legion here. Why is the 501st here? I guess they are just so good they are brought everywhere. Anyway, I like this mission because you get to play as Obi-Wan and fight Grievous head to head. Okay, it may not be as cool as the movies, but use your imagination a little bit. Now onto the best mission in all of Battlefront 2, the Assault on the Jedi Temple. That's right, you actually get to participate in Order 66 and fight against Jedi in the Jedi Temple. You get to capture the Jedi Council Room, defend the archives from being destroyed, which is like the hardest objective in the game. Like, I was so close to losing it all. Oh, by the way, if you end up failing any objective, you have to restart the mission over again, which on some levels can be kind of annoying. Anyway, then you steal some holocrons, and then you get to play as Anakin and kill young— okay, it's actually just a cutscene, but it's close enough. But you do get to play as Anakin, which is really cool. Even has his hood on like in the movie. And after defeating some Jedi Masters, the clone campaign is over, and you see the transition to the Empire. Despite what current canon states, you still play as the 501st Legion of Clones, though they are in Stormtrooper armor. And hey, we even get another text crawl of the Rise of the Empire, so like the first game, there is technically 2 campaigns, though I guess that's more like 2 acts. Anyway, the Rise of the Empire campaign isn't nearly as good as the Fall of the Old Republic, though I do have to say there are some really cool missions, like putting down rebellions on Naboo, destroying the remaining droids on Mustafar, putting down a clone rebellion on Kamino, and getting to play as Boba Fett. Like, it's kinda weird he'd be on the Empire side against the clones, but I guess he isn't like them. Then you get to try to stop the rebellion from stealing the Death Star plans, and even get to recreate the end of Rogue One. Okay, maybe Rise of the Empire has some cool missions, but it literally ends at the Battle of Hoth, which I guess was the last big Empire win shown in the movies, and I guess Cloud City wasn't really a battle, but whatever. It just feels so weird to end the campaign there. I also didn't feel like the campaign was leading to a real end or anything there, it just kinda ended. It would have been so cool to have the last mission be a space battle over Endor trying to defend the Death Star 2 from being blown up, and have it end kinda like Halo Reach 5 years before Reach by having us lose. That would have been really cool. It also would have made sense ending the campaign at the end of one of the movies and not the start of one. Other than the Clone Rebellion, I didn't really think there were many missions where the clones felt important to the playable characters. Like throughout the Fall of the Old Republic, the narration is constantly talking about betraying the Jedi, and it's only a matter of time, which I thought was really cool. But the clones in the Empire just are not given that dilemma at all, though I do have to give them props for letting the Empire fight both clones and droids. It makes for cool, memorable missions. Overall, I like the campaign, though by the end I was just kind of waiting for it to be over. Like, there are some missions that felt like they were just way too long and kind of repetitive as I kept dying and having to run all the way back just to die again. I mentioned it before, but the cutscenes in the game are so cool. I love hearing the clone perspective, and this blurry effect on the cutscenes is pretty cool. Nothing amazing happens in any of these cutscenes, but they are a nice change of pace from only having movie clips in the last game. Speaking of movie clips, they return in this game, though they are amazingly short. Sometimes they don't even correlate to the correct planet. Also, most of them are from Revenge of the Sith, which makes sense since this was the brand new movie at the time, and the first game couldn't have had Episode 3's clips in it at all. These clips will appear before you enter a mission. They are just to give you a feel for what the planet and type of mission you're doing. And hey, they're even in a widescreen this time. Way to step up from last game, guys. Also, I have no idea where this clip is from. It's before the Polis Massa mission to try and find the Death Star plans, but like, I don't recognize this clip at all. It's been a while since I've watched Revenge of the Sith, but I can't even pin down where this would be in the movie. And I don't think this clip would be made just for this game because of how short its development was, and it would be so weird if this was the only clip made for this game. Like, is this a deleted scene from the movie? Let me know in the comments if you know anything about it. It has confused me for so long. As I said before, the only 2 factions you get to play in the campaign are the Republic and the Empire, so if you've been wanting to play as the other factions, you can do so in the next game mode, Galactic Conquest. That's right, it returns from the previous game, and it's so much better. Unlike Battlefront 1, I've actually played this Galactic Conquest a ton, and that's because it's really good. The only thing it shares from the previous game is that you go and conquer planets, but in this game you are in a capital ship on a huge map of the galaxy, and you and the enemy faction move around from planet to planet, and when you're over an enemy-controlled planet, you get to play a match to see if you can win the planet. Also, if you and your enemy are on the same space, you get to engage in a space battle. In this mode, you have to unlock units to actually play as them, which is nice, since it means that you can slowly unlock more and more as you're playing, so it doesn't immediately get repetitive. You can also buy bonuses like heroes or energy boosts to make the next match go in your favor. It's kinda lame that all the assets are for the Republic clones, but it's whatever. And yeah, I really like this mode. It's basically a big campaign with you deciding on what you want to do. I don't know, maybe I'm really lame, but I really love deciding on which planet to go to next, like I was actually in the Clone Wars. And yeah, Galactic Conquest is pretty simple, but adds a ton of replayability, especially since you can play as any of the 4 factions, though I do wish you could choose which faction you're going against. Kind of a missed opportunity in my opinion. Now onto the final mode of the game, Instant Action, which also returns. Like the last game, you're able to choose which maps you want to play on. You can even do a bunch in a row and what factions you play as, though you can't mix the eras around, which is really weird since they do it twice in the Rise of the Empire campaign, but it's only there. Like, I get that clones versus stormtroopers would be kind of difficult to tell apart, but you had us already do that in a mission, so what's the big deal? Just let me fight rebels as droids. But anyway, you're able to choose which game mode you want to play, with Conquest, Capture the Flag, Assault, and Hunt. You can also change the settings for the modes to fit more what you want from the game. You already know what Conquest is, and Capture the Flag is exactly what you'd expect. It's kinda cool that depending on what map you play on decides if it's 2 or single flag CTF, but yeah, I'm sure it's more fun with friends, so I'm not just destroying the AI in this game. The next mode is Assault, which is heroes versus heroes, with you being able to choose whether you want to be on either the hero or villain side, and there is no era gatekeeping here, so you can play as Jango Fett and fight against Luke Skywalker. I forgot to record any gameplay of this, so please just use your imagination to imagine what it's like. Oh no, psh, psh, it's Jango Fett, don't worry, Mace Windu's here, get him, psh, psh, I saw his Ventress is here, psh, Luke and Vader destroying the Empire, psh, psh, psh. And Hunt has you either playing as hunters or the hunted, like in Endor you can play as Ewoks or Stormtroopers hunting them down. Please play this for yourself, trust me, it's a fun time. Also, I feel like the overall menu design for the instant action is a downgrade because you don't get to see any of the little previews for the maps. I don't know, this menu is just so boring to me. And yeah, those are all the modes in the game, a big step up from the previous game, and all the different modes allow for much more replayability without feeling bored of doing the same thing over and over again. The basic gameplay is roughly the same as the last game. I mean, rolling is a bit different since you can do it in any direction, but you still have different classes and each faction has its own variety of classes. They have changed some of the classes from the last game, like the Dark Trooper now has his lightning gun, which is pretty cool. And the standard trooper for the droid army is a super battle droid, which is kind of weird since I feel like the regular battle droids with a blaster should have been the default. Also, you can play as Grievous' Magna Guards, which is cool. The ground vehicles also return and are basically the same as the last game. You can even drive the AT-AT at a super fast speed of 1 mile per hour. There are a variety of spaceships you can fly dependent on your faction, and they are all pretty cool, though I didn't really have a standout favorite. I'm just lucky I didn't crash all the time. There is a really big variety of maps, which is nice, with a lot of them being brand new for this game and based on moments seen in Revenge of the Sith. There are returning ones like Hoth, Mos Eisley, and Rinvar. Also, I learned from the last game that Rinvar was featured in Pandemic Studios' previous game, Attack of the Clones. Thanks to Dylan W. Films for letting me know in the first Battlefront video. Still a weird inclusion for a map. Now it's time to talk about the graphics for the game, and while it isn't a huge step up from the previous game, I think it's really nice. Like, there's a lot of texture work that makes the game stand out against its predecessor. I really love the clone armor, the blue colors of the 501st are really nice. The human faces still aren't exactly there yet, but for 2005, I honestly expected a lot worse. Especially when only one faction isn't primarily behind a helmet or our droids. Now, if you've seen my channel before, you know I love talking about skyboxes, and the skyboxes in the space levels are so nice. I just love being able to see Coruscant while I'm in a space battle. It's such a nice detail that you can see the planet you're over that I really like. Also, I'm pretty sure the skybox in Hoth is just an image that's wrapped around the map. Now, the music. Had to be turned down all the way for copyright reasons. But it's Star Wars music, of course it's going to be great. The sound effects are also very Star Wars with the blaster shots and lightsaber sounds. Sadly, the menu sound effects are pretty boring compared to the last game. Now I want to talk about the little things throughout the game that I noticed. First, I want to say how impressed I am that Ventress is actually in this game. She was in the first Clone Wars show, and I just didn't expect she'd be in here. Also, I totally don't remember her being in this game at all. Also, since I'm playing on Xbox, that means I have the free DLC with Kit Fisto, and he's pretty cool, but for some reason he doesn't have a shirt on. Must be cold here on Rinvar. But I do have the variety of heroes that are here. Like, it isn't even limited to just Jedi, you can also have heroes with blasters like Boba Fett and Han Solo. You can even play as Palpatine when playing on the Death Star. It's a little weird that heroes are tied to specific maps, unless you're playing Assault. Like, it'd be cool to play as Yoda on Geonosis or something. Much like the merging of eras, I just think it'd be something cool. Also, when you're playing as heroes, I think it's kind of weird that Anakin is just a villain. Like, I get it, but it's also kind of weird. Also, I think it's weird that Aayla Secura has different colored lightsabers in the cutscenes than she does in the game. Maybe it's just the filter that they used, but it's just something that I noticed that's really weird. The aim assist is thankfully not as high in this game, so I felt like I was actually aiming most of the time. Also, the zoom in for third person is fixed to not be at the top of the screen, which is really nice. First person also returns, and while I prefer third person overall, it's still a really nice addition. Also, now for what may be the worst change in the game, they changed the loading screen from the Great Planet zoom into this really boring picture of a clone. Like, yeah, it loads so much faster, but we lost so much for it. I mean, it goes to show how much better that original loading screen was when, despite playing Battlefront II a lot more, I thought that Battlefront on loading screen was used for both games. It's just so iconic. Also, the PC version, while similar, has a different main menu, and I gotta say the main menu on Xbox is just so much better. Using clips from the movies on the side just throws me right into the galaxy. So yeah, Battlefront 2 is a really good sequel to the game that came out only 1 year after its predecessor, which is still really crazy to me. This game added in so much with so many different changes that I am really curious as to how much overlap was between the two games. Like, obviously they reused a ton, but still, space battles are just so cool and definitely should be a series staple. What do you mean that none of the other console games have space battles on this scale? Yeah, sadly there's no Battlefront 3, but we do have the DICE games and the PSP games. And I've not ever played the PSP games, so let me know in the comments if you think I should make a video on them. But my next Star Wars video will be Republic Commando, since that's what you guys voted for in the poll, which will be fun. But yeah, let me know what you think about the original Battlefront 2, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Have a good day, and goodbye!